Okay, and welcome, my friends, to the next episode of the Red Delta Project podcast, live stream Q&A here on the RDP YouTube channel, where we take a fundamental approach to fitness to give you more power, control, and freedom over your healthy lifestyle. As always, I'm Matt Schifferly, and today's podcast is sponsored by the fine folks over at Kensui, makers of the world's greatest weight vest, in my opinion, and that's saying something, especially since I have this personal little about weight vests. I've never enjoyed using them. I've always found them to be very uncomfortable, very cumbersome to use. They're not very good for adjusting weight. They're not the best for a lot of exercises, putting too much weight on the lumbar spine, so they're not good for push-ups and other associated exercises. And the folks over at Kensui have made the best weight vest because instead of using those stupid little iron weights or little sandbags that leak and that you have to adjust the weight of the vest by taking out all these little weights, it uses actual weight plates that you either have on hand at the gym or you can purchase yourself. Of course, just standard good old-fashioned weight plates. Basically, it's the best way to turn your body into a barbell. They also have a host of other great accessories they've come out with, like their Ascent platforms for squats and push-ups, much better than push-up handles, and their Swissies pull-up handles as well. But anyway, link is down below with a discount code if you want to check those out. I also have reviews on the YouTube channel for the weight vest and all of their latest accessories as well. If you just type in Kensui, which is the Japanese word for pull-up, on the RDP YouTube channel, then you'll find all that as well. So Michael is in the house. Great to see you there, my friend. Today, we're kind of doing a episode that's all about tackling the biggest challenges in health and fitness. Lots of times, in order to get what we really want from our diet and exercise habits, it's not so much about doing things right. It's about taking off the brakes, minimizing and mitigating the things that are holding you back. And we're going to be addressing three primary objectives here, or topics, where we have loss of motivation, plateaus, or even regressions where we feel like we're moving backwards. But because it's a live feed Q&A and you can type anything in down below, I invite you to please let me know what are your biggest challenges that we can address, and maybe I can help you here live as well. All right, Jamie's coming on. Hi, Matt from Puerto Rico, trying to overcome pull-up plateau, but keep getting hurt for overdoing on my elbow joint. All right, very good. So let's tackle that one right off the bat, shall we? Jamie's right off on the gun here. So a lot of times when we have elbow issues, particularly with pulling action, and this is very common, is it's a lack of scapular stability and tension in especially your lats, but also to a degree your traps and your rhomboids. So what ends up happening is whenever we're doing our pulling exercises, we have a slight elevation of the shoulders and protraction. And when I mean slight, I literally mean a few millimeters can make all the difference in the world, because it's not so much about the position of your shoulders and the elbows and stuff. It's about where the force is flowing through the body. Because when we hang from a pull-up bar, we apply resistance to our body, we have force going through the body, just like electricity goes through a circuit. And for the most part, our body can handle a load of force. Your joints are incredibly strong, and they can take an obscene amount of stress and bounce back smiling without any real damage whatsoever. However, as martial artists understand, if you have even the slightest misalignment of the ability to transfer force through our joints, it takes almost nothing as far as application of force to create damage to the ligaments and the tendons. And that's what usually happens, is most of us have atrociously bad scapular control, and glutes and or the lats are kind of like the glutes of the back. Most people have a horrible time turning them on. It's very rare I'll find someone with good lat activation right off the gate. And that's largely because, like the glutes, it's because we sit all day. We're very rarely using our lats for anything meaningful. So then we do exercises, and even though the exercise is supposed to work the lats, it's supposed to engage the muscle, always remember that exercises do not work muscles. You use your muscle to do the exercise. But if you have trouble engaging and using the muscle in the first place, there is literally nothing you can do in the exercise that's going to make it effective or safe, because the activation and utilization of your muscles comes from your mind, not the exercise. It doesn't matter. It's like, well, if you do the pull-up this way, it's supposed to be working your lats. Yes, it's supposed to, but the exercise does not tell your lats to actively engage. It's just the vehicle. It's kind of like driving down the road in your car, taking your hands off the wheel and assuming the road will tell your car where it needs to go. It doesn't work that way. So I always recommend make sure that you are using good scapular retraction warm-ups. I do this a whole lot, like scapular pull-ups, when you're hanging from a pull-up bar and you're just kind of doing pull-ups with just your shoulder blades. Also scapular rows, so leaning back and pulling shoulders front and back as well. These are things that get you much more proficient at utilizing your back muscles to control your scaps. And then when you're doing your pull-ups, your shoulder blades are back and depressed, especially as you pull up. Take a video of yourself doing the pull-ups. You shouldn't feel like you're hunching yourself up at the top of the pull-up position. You should have your shoulder blades down and back like you're reaching for your hands with your chest. And that should get more stress in your back and out of your elbows. Very good. So we're talking about plateaus, and that's the other thing with the plateau too, is when your muscles, I mean, the lats are big muscles, my friends. They're huge. And so they carry a lot of force. They can create a lot of tension. So trying to do pull-ups with poor lat activation, it's kind of like, I'm blanking on an analogy right now, but basically it's like you've got a big, powerful V8 engine and only 2 cylinders are working. There's nothing you're going to possibly do to make that car go fast. You have a lot of muscle that is supposed to be working that just basically isn't. So of course, your ability to everything with it and be stronger and everything is going to be significantly hindered. So get those lats engaged, practice engaging them, and maybe even some overcoming isometrics as well. A simple push down on gymnastic springs or straps or something. It's a good way to work on that as well. Hope that helps you there, Jamie, because I know that could be very frustrating. All right, let's see what other we got. Adnan, hey Matt, what to do to achieve a higher side kick? No, very good. So believe it or not, when we're talking about kicks, a lot of times we get too focused in one area. So let's just cover the first base now, plateaus in general. So a plateau is oftentimes had because we're focused too much in a narrow range of influences that are important for the activity. It's like, with diet, I'm just cutting out sugar. Okay, what else? And like, that's it. I'm like, that's not nearly enough. Or it's like, okay, I'm going to get stronger. What's your strategy? I'm going to put more weight on the bar. Okay, good. What else? Like, you've got to have at least 5 things as part of a progression strategy. No matter what you're trying to achieve, no matter what you're trying to progress with, I should be able to sit you down and be like, okay, you're trying to lose weight or have a better sidekick. What are 5 things you're going to work on to make that happen? If you've only got 1 or 2, good luck, because every time we're going after any measure of success in anything in fitness, it's a lot of things that we've got to pull in and get better with. We can't just get better at 1 or 2 things and expect that to carry us all the way to the finish line, because it's not enough. It just simply isn't enough. So once you've implemented those 1 or 2 things, like for example, I want to have a better sidekick, I'm going to stretch all day. It's like, good, great, awesome. We need mobility, flexibility, good. But what else? That's not going to be enough. You need to have more than that. And so once you've maximized or gotten a pretty good amount of result in that one thing, of course, you're not going to go any further than that, because you're essentially trying to play chess with one piece. And even you'd be like, but the queen is the greatest, most versatile piece. I'm like, yeah, but it's still one piece. You're still not bringing enough to the battlefield. So better sidekick. 1 is hip strength. My Taekwondo instructor always told us, he's like, hip strength is super important for any sort of kicking, not just the height of your kicks, but the control of your kicks. Me, myself, I've always had very, very, very weak hips. So he's like, okay, do a kick. And I'm not kicking. I'm just kind of flailing my leg out and hoping to hell I hit something. So he's like, that's not going to cut it, because your hips are fairly weak. And it's not just the hips of your kicking leg, but this is the part that's often neglected, is the hips of your supporting leg that are super important. The hip isometrics that I give in my book, Overcoming Isometrics, are all about working the hips in both ways. You can't use your hip in an isolated fashion, because even if you're doing a flying side kick, you've got the hip responsible for the kicking leg, but the hip of the supporting leg is incredibly important. If you've ever done this or seen someone and they try and do like a kick against a heavy bag, and it's like the heavy bag barely moves and they get blown backwards, right? That's because they don't have much tension in the supporting leg. They have no stability, no balance. And I've always said you're only as strong as you are stable. So here's what I always recommend is make a very good practice of the overcoming isometrics for the hips that I recommend. One of the simplest ways to do this is just the simple hip abduction and adduction exercise where you just stand like anywhere you like with your feet ever so slightly toed out, maybe a little bit more than shoulder width. And you're just going to squeeze the floor together with your adductors, your inner thigh muscles, as if you're trying to, bring your feet together. And then you have your feet pry apart. Those are your abductors. Make sure your hips are fully extended. You're going to feel your hips working in that regard. And that's going to get those hip muscles to work much harder. Then when you're doing your actual side kicks, I recommend doing a lot of practice and warm up with really slow side kicks. Put your hands on a wall or a sturdy support if you like, because we don't want balance to be the limiting factor in your workout, and practice the best side kick you can and effectively make it a hip workout during that. And those will be very integral in improving your side kicks as well. All right, good question here. Cam S, excuse me, can you explain tension? Yeah, okay, make a fist and then tense it up. Squeeze even tighter. That's muscle tension. Muscle tension is just simply the ability to contract your muscle with more force. That's all it is. And it is entirely controlled by your brain and your nervous system. That is, it's not controlled by the exercise. It's not controlled by a weight. It's not controlled by resistance. Those things are just applications of tension. They're the things that necessitate tension. If you have a 10-pound dumbbell and you curl it like this, it'd be understandable, but incorrect to think, yeah, I've got a 10-pound weight in my hand. That's why my bicep is tense. No, it's not. It's because your brain is telling your bicep to tense up, and the weight is just simply creating some resistance that necessitates a certain amount of tension. So if you have a 20-pound dumbbell in your hand, now you have created correlation, a more higher level of resistance, so you need more tension. But it's not the dumbbell that's creating the tension, it's your brain. So tension is literally tensing your muscle up. And if you're always letting it be reactive and not purposely controlling it with your focus and concentration, then your ability to effectively get the fundamental element that makes all of training work and effective is largely left up to chance. I don't know about you, but I sure as hell don't want my workouts left up to chance. I want to make sure that I am effectively making something happen. I am moving the needle, as it were. And that comes from your concentration. So don't just go through the exercises. Don't just be like, okay, I've got 100 push-ups to do, and you just go through the motions. The push-up doesn't make you stronger. The exercise does not make your muscles contract. It's your concentration and focus that does. And that's why I'm always telling people, practice your overcoming isometrics, because there is nothing that is more effective at teaching you how to generate more tension than overcoming isometrics. Nothing is even close to that level of effectiveness that quickly. You'll have more proficiency in your neuromuscular contraction, your ability to generate tension within 2 days than you would from 2 years of trying to work on it otherwise. And I speak from experience with that. All right, let's see what else we can get. So when I was talking about plateaus earlier, like I was saying, we don't want to have a one or two-pronged approach. We want to have lots of things we can work on. And that's why sometimes I'll sit down with people, like, I'm going to build muscle, I'm going to lose weight, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. I'm like, okay, so what's your progressive strategy? Progressive strategy is a very important thing, because a lot of times we are kind of led to believe that if I do the right thing, that's going to get me the results I want. Totally incorrect. Because whatever that thing is, it's static. I just addressed this in a video I posted to the YouTube channel yesterday. Will 100 push-ups a day build muscle? No matter what answer you give that person asking that question, it's going to be wrong. It's going to be wrong at some point, because you never get results by doing the thing correctly. You get results by doing things better over time. So I don't care what you're doing now. I don't care what your diet and your workout program looks like. How is it going to be better a week from now? What is your strategy to improve things a week from now, a month from now, a year from now? What are you working on to keep improving things? Because nothing holds people back more than doing things, quote, right or correctly. I don't care how right it is. If it doesn't change, you don't change. And that's why we get into plateaus, because we think there's one correct way to address things. I'm like, I'm eating the right way. I'm training the right way. I'm using the right program or whatever. But without a progressive strategy, you're dead in the water, because all you're concerned with is standing still. I don't care where you are. I care about what direction you're headed into. And that's why you want to have at least 5 things that you can improve on as part of your progressive strategy. I want to build muscle and strength with push-ups. Great. Leave 5 things that you can work on over the next several months to make your muscles work progressively harder over time. At least 5 things. Heaven forbid it's only 1 or 2 things. If you only got 1 or 2 things, you're going to be hitting a dead end real quick, because you just don't have enough assets and resources to explore various ways of improvement and progression. It's like, I'm going to do more reps. Good. What do you do when you can't do that anymore? I used to have a challenge I gave myself where I had a course that I ran through my neighborhood in Vermont. And I was like, I'm going to improve my cardio. I'm going to get to be a faster runner. And I did the course and I timed myself and I did it under a little under 20 minutes. It's like, okay, so my whole strategy is I'm going to do this in less time. And that worked great for several months because I kept chipping away at that time. I kept getting faster and faster. But you just simply can't run infinitely faster. I'm not the $1 million man. I got to 15 minutes and 3 seconds. I remember vividly that was my limit of how I could get. I was like, come on, like get under 15 minutes. I just couldn't make it happen. Be like 15 minutes and 3 seconds, and then be 15 minutes and 5 seconds, 15 minutes and 4 seconds. I was like, oh, come on. I can't make this happen. But that was my only strategy. I wasn't concerned about technique. I wasn't concerned about my breathing. I wasn't concerned about my stride or my pace or any of these other strategies. I was just trying to do it one way. So of course you plateau really quickly because you only have one card to play at the poker table. Let's get to some other things that we can address here. Gatsu, good to see you, my friend. Hey, Matt, I just got a brand new 15-kilogram range of motion on training. Neck with it is a bit awkward. That doesn't matter too much, right? It kind of does. If the range of motion isn't full or even static, that should be fine for the neck gains. Absolutely. I'm not a big fan of, using the neck through a big range of motion with a lot of resistance sort of thing. So remember, though, when it comes to muscle, you just need that tension. Now, you could have other approaches or qualifiers of how you're applying that tension. But if your goal is just size and strength, you just need tension. That's it. I don't care what exercise you're doing. I don't care how you're doing it. If you're generating more tension, you're getting stronger. That's what strength is, the ability to generate more tension. It's that simple. So don't worry about all the other variables, especially if they're compromising that ability to generate tension. Ravi is asking, hey, man, I just spent my vacation eating and not working out. Very good. And I got a few niggly injuries I don't usually get when I work out regularly. Is that a thing? Oh, it's always a thing. Totally. So let me give you this example. 3 years ago, I moved cross country again. I've done this several times, and I spent about 12 to 14 hours a day in a U-Haul moving van. And after 2 days of doing that, man, everything was shot. My knees were shot, my back was shot, my shoulders were shot. I had so many things that were just falling apart on me. I felt like I aged 50 years in 48 hours. Because what is good for the body? Movement, the generation of tension, the ability for energy to flow through the body. These are all things that keep us healthy and young and all these things that stave off injury. If you are sitting and you are not doing things that take care of you, you can regress pretty quickly as far as some of these things that basically imbalance how your body is experiencing force. So yeah, it happens. Of course, happens all the time. But the good news is it's very easy to fix it. All you do is just simply kind of get back to where you were before. I was like, what were you doing before? I was doing lunges, doing some pull-ups. I was hanging leg raises and stuff. I'm like, great, just keep going back to where you were. Lots of times the mistake that people make with like, oh, I was on vacation or I was sick, I got to like double down. I got to do some extreme thing. No, just go back to doing whatever you were doing before. You don't need to like go and make penance for going off your diet or a workout program. Just keep going and doing whatever you were doing before. And you'll just jump right back onto it. No need to reinvent things like that. Graham is coming on. Ian, hey, Matt, a question about convict conditioning by Paul Wade. Yes. He says that until you master steps 1 through 6, you should only train calisthenics twice a week. What do you think of this? It's very hard to say because I've been progressively having the attitude, and I kind of addressed this a little bit in the past couple of episodes of the RDP podcast. Yeah, my approach these days is just train however the frick you want. Seriously, I don't care what routine you have. You can do anything in your workout routine. It probably doesn't matter. Train every day, train once a week, train 5 times a day, train once a day. Like literally, you have so much flexibility in how you address your training that you can make almost anything work, however you want to do it. Literally, I have that attitude now of like, yeah, fine, whatever, make it up. What kind of routine should I have? Just pick something. Ask the magic 8-ball. Use a freaking Ouija board. Doesn't matter, because there's only 2 things a good workout routine has to satisfy. Number 1 is you got to be able to stick to it. Got to have that consistency. And 2 is you want to be able to have a work to rest ratio in such that when you come to your workouts, you can create that progressive stimulus that you can train effectively. You don't want to be like, all right, Monday I feel awesome and I kill that workout. And then on Friday, I'm like, oh God, I'm so tired. You get down on the floor and you're like 5 grunts down, and you're like, okay, here we go, push-ups, and everything's like me in that U-Haul, right? As long as you can avoid that sort of scenario and you're like, I'm pretty good for each workout I do, then yeah, work out however you want. Now, it's very hard as coaches, though, to imply that sort of advice, because especially when you're writing books, I've written 9 of them now. I'm on number 10. That's why my living room looks a little bit different, is because that's my little photo studio for my next book, is that it's really hard to give people advice that's not explicit, that's not detailed. Because the best advice out there that people like to follow is stuff that's exact. Train exactly this way, this number of sets and reps, do this. And it's kind of almost crazy. We learned about this in nutrition class, about like, if you ever want to create a nutrition course, tell people very explicit, detailed instructions and they'll follow it more likely. If I give you advice that is really what you need of something like my 3P strategy, sit down and have plant, protein, and portion size monitored at each meal so you're not eating too much. You have some protein, you have some plant, that'll pretty much take care of your diet for the most part, right? That's literally all people need as far as dietary advice to 80%. But people don't want that. People don't care about this. It's too vague. It's not explicit. What people like is like, okay, you're going to wake up at exactly 7:02 p.m. or a.m. on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but 7:01 on Tuesday and Thursday. Then after exactly 5 minutes of brushing your teeth, make sure you're going clockwise from right to left, unless it's April, in which case you want to go the other way while standing on one foot. Then you're going to have exactly 3.6 eggs. The more precise you can make this stuff, the more people are like, oh, this has got to be a good plan. Okay, this is what I got to follow and stuff. And you find a lot of influencers out there will do this sort of thing. But the fact is, they're just making it completely up. They don't know what you really need. But they've learned over the years that if I say that you do exactly 3 sets with 27 seconds of rest in between, unless you're over 40, in which it's 29 seconds for the first half of the year, the more explicit you can get the instructions to be, the more people are likely to actually follow it and take it seriously. So we get this advice in books and stuff, and it's usually a good place to start. And this is why I'm always telling people, if you read Convict Conditioning, you also have to read CMAS. And the reason for that is because people read Convict Conditioning and they think they understand what Paul Wade's talking about, and they don't have a clue, because what Paul Wade is giving you in that book is general guidelines and advices. And that's how good coaches work. But people take that as explicit instructions because it's in book form. You got to write something down. But if you read CMAS as well, you realize that a lot of the stuff that Paul Wade talks about in CMAS don't even come close to what he talks about in Convict Conditioning. They're the sort of things of like, wait a minute, he just said to do X, but in CMAS, he's saying completely the opposite. He's like, yeah, and that's perfectly fine because it's all about context. But when we read a book like Convict Conditioning, You can only put in so much information. People don't understand this, but the original convict conditioning was 5 times bigger than it is now. It's literally like it was a volume that was supposed to be as big as like no one knows what a phone book is anymore, but huge. That's how big the original convict conditioning was. And Dragon Door was like, we can't sell a book this big, dear God. So that's why they whittled it down to convict conditioning. And then they took some of the rest of it and put convict conditioning 2, and then explosive calisthenics, convict conditioning 3, and CMAS also took off as well as kind of a extended blog post that really got a lot of traction. So that's why you've got to get the whole thing. Convict conditioning in and of itself is not the full story. I'm drowning on about this, but seriously, folks, anytime you've got someone saying train this way or do this way and stuff like that, start there. Use it as a template, but change it however you want. People email me all the time and they're like, this author says I should train this way, but I kind of feel like making this change. I'm like, yeah, go for it. Change, whatever. Make whatever changes you like, because chances are very good it's not really going to do anything. And even if it does do something, you're going to get good feedback real quick, either positive or negative. And then you know. So train as much as you like. If you want more, go for more. If you want less, go for less. Do whatever you see fit in order to just get the consistency and the progression taken care of. Kev Davies. I know Chris Davies. In a relation by chance, Kev? Hey, Matt, 2.5 years of poor sleep, 2 kids. Wow. Means I'm in a perpetual plateau of making up on lost ground. Focusing on form seems to be the way to feel like I'm progressing. Absolutely. So that's a great example, right? So that's the second thing that I addressed in the tile template that I put up is not so much plateaus, but what if you're going backwards? What if you're regressing in your training and stuff? Oh no, we don't want that, do we? Well, we have to first make peace with this regressions, because life is not linear, my friends. It's impossible to make linear progress. And even if you do hit a good point of success, something's going to happen that's going to cause you to backslide a little bit at some point. A couple of years ago, I got COVID in January, and I got, the long COVID. I had 5 months of really crappy workouts. I lost so much ground because every day I was so perpetually exhausted. I didn't have 5.5 years of poor sleep with kids and everything, but it's the same thing. Like life just was like, sorry, bow. I know you want to be strong. I know you want your great workouts and everything, but screw you. Life is going to happen and you're going to regress. You're going to go backwards. It happens to everybody from time to time for any number of reasons. So that's, again, why having a multiple prong approach to progression is so good, because Kev, you are very smart. You did exactly what I did. Sometimes my workouts would literally be a set of 10 push-ups. That was all I could muster for the day. But I kept working on technique. I was working on engaging my lats more with those push-ups, packing those shoulders down and stuff. So then when I did get my energy level back up, finally, I was like, wow, my push-ups are so much better right now, because I was still making progress if and when I could. I always tell my clients, sometimes they'll be like, oh, I've got to cancel the session. I'm not feeling very good. I was out late last night. I'm hungover. I'm stressed or whatever. I'm like, just bring me whatever you've got. One of the biggest misconceptions people have about trainers is they think we're there to force them to comply to whatever program we're going to make them do. Yeah, if you're a bad trainer, sure. But if someone comes in and they're like, my back hurts, I'm exhausted, I haven't slept very well, and my knees hurt, I'm not going to be like, great, let's do Tabata jump lunges. Yeah, if I'm a bad coach, but my job as a trainer, as a coach, is to be like, bring me whatever you got. Bring me the time you have. Bring me the physical condition you have. Bring me the energy you have. If it's a little, we can work with that. And it's my job as a coach to make it still work and progress them somehow with whatever they got. That's my job. That's the job of a real trainer. It's not to force a square peg in a round hole. It's for them to say, I've got a round hole today, and be like, well, I got to whittle this peg of a workout program so it still fits you. That's what a good coach will do. And Kev, that's exactly what you're doing, is saying, I can't have, my usual workout program because I just don't have the time and energy right now. So I progress in other ways. So when we are facing a quote regression and we're going backwards, yeah, life may be throwing you quite a few curveballs. Do you stop? No, you don't stop. You don't take a break necessarily, because fundamentally, you don't have a choice in the matter. You can't stop this whole fitness thing. If you are like, I'm going to take a break from working out and trying to eat right, you can't stop the fundamental processes that are in charge of your health and fitness. When we eat well and we exercise and stuff, you don't make anything happen. You're just taking that process that's always happening completely on autopilot, and you're kind of influencing the direction it's going into, saying, I want to make sure it's going in this direction, so that way I'm developing these qualities. So whenever we're, quote, taking a break, and no, like, I'm not going to work out for a while, I'm not going to diet and everything, it's like driving in a car. You're not pulling off to the side of the road. You're still going down the highway, and you're taking your hands off the wheel. That's what's actually going on. You're just giving up control, but you're still going to end up somewhere. And that's why I'm always encouraging people, still just do whatever you can do. And then my book, Micro Workouts, is the whole thing. Like, you don't have much time and energy. Great, fine. I was, sick with COVID, 10 push-ups. That was my workout for the day. Was it still doing something? Absolutely. There's no such thing as an ineffective workout, set, or rep. And I was still directing things in some way, shape, or form by working on form and technique. So that way I still had at least one hand on the wheel saying, come on, I got to get this thing to where I want it to go, and not giving up on it. Anyway, lots to unpack there. Kev, you're an inspiration, man. Keep up the great work. All right. Dan Usak saying, hey, Matt, love the ISO chain. Very good. I do too. Since dynamic exercises require more recovery time, is it okay to use the ISO chain the day after some dynamic work? Absolutely. Sure. The ISO chain is wonderful for that because it's giving you objective feedback on your actual ability to create tension in the muscle. It's one of the few devices in the world that can actually do this. Of course, dynamic exercise gives you the feedback based on your kinesthetic awareness of, are you moving things around? But the ISO chain is probably the best device for actually trying to quantify the actual tension in your muscles to some degree, at least outside of an exercise lab. So here's what you want to pay attention to is you do a dynamic exercise program. Let's say you do pull-ups. Okay? And the next day, you're going to do seated rows or bent over rows and curls. What kind of tension are you generating with that? Do that one way. Take a look at your max and your average, particularly your max. What kind of weight are you setting up? Let's say for your rows, you're at 150 pounds. Okay, great. Now try using the ISO chain on a day when you're a little more fresh for those muscles and see what you can do. You're like, well, I had to have it at a 150 or so after the dynamic work, but if I wait a couple days, then I can make it 170 or 175 or maybe even 200. That's telling you just how much your ability to generate muscle tension can be amplified with more rest, or if it may not even matter, right? You could be like, well, I had 150 the day after, waited a few days, still at 150. Great. Okay. That means that you can still crush the muscles and generate a lot of tension afterwards, and it doesn't necessarily need that much recovery. Very good. Very, very good. All right, let's get to some more questions here. I've covered plateaus, covered regressions. We'll get to motivation here in just a second. Let's see. Jen Zem, hey Matt, fit is probably the difference between instructor, coach, mentor, different strokes for different folks. Absolutely. People for the most part is beginners and need strict programming. Very good. Absolutely. But here's the thing is a lot of times when we are looking for a strict program, what we're really looking for is control. What we really want, because oftentimes we come into the world of fitness with this sense that our body is not quite doing what we want it to be. It's gaining weight, or it's losing weight, or it's weaker, or whatever. Fitness fundamentally is always about trying to control this body of ours in some way, shape, or form to look, feel, and perform the way we want it to. And we usually come into the world of fitness when we become more acutely aware that, wait a minute, I'm not in control nearly as much of this thing as I thought I was. Oh boy, And so we love a lot of strict rules and programming and stuff because they give us a sense of control. It's like, you will have control over your muscle. You will have control over your weight if you follow this program or these strict rules. But this is a complete illusion. Okay? No diet, no workout program will ever give you complete control because nobody's in control of Mother Nature. So that's why when I'm coaching someone as a beginner, the only thing I'm concerned with is what can they stick to? The only rules I'm creating is what can you repeat? That's all I care. I don't care if it's right. I don't even care if it's progressive at first. I just want, what can you stick to? But I know that I have to give off the illusion of that, of like, okay, you want to do this exactly Tuesday and Friday. And they're like, okay, if I do this Tuesday and Friday, that'll be good. Yes, Tuesday and Friday is good. Of course, in the back of my head, I'm like, dude, do it any days you want. I don't care. It doesn't really matter. But we like having that sense of control. So the strict rules give us that, direction with like bumpers on the bowling alley. They keep us going in the right direction. But what we want to make sure as beginners is that we're also very flexible, because especially as beginners, you can do almost anything. It's going to work. But you also want to be very open to flexibility and change. And this is the big mistake that a lot of us make, is like, okay, I found this routine on the internet of how to do calisthenics or something like that. And this is a routine. Now I'm going to stick to this like glue, and I'm never going to make any changes to it. And I have to stay disciplined and just keep on it. It's like, no, if you want to make any changes to it, go for it. Make the changes, whatever you see fit, especially if you're having trouble sticking to it. Because that's the only objective you have as a beginner, is what can you stick to? What can you continue doing? And when we are very strict about stay on the routine and everything like that, we actually can compromise those things. All right, let's see what other questions I can get to. Kickboxer 69, nice kick. Hey Matt, is arch back or hollow body better for lat activation during pull-ups? Is there even a difference between the two? Well, ideally there shouldn't be. Ideally, there shouldn't be very much of a difference, because remember, muscle is really simple. It has an origin and an insertion point, and you create tension to pull them closer together, or at least generate force between the two. And ideally, fundamentally, it shouldn't matter what the hell you're doing. It shouldn't matter what your technique looks like. It shouldn't matter what exercise you're doing. You should be able to just tense the muscle, and it tenses regardless of what it is. That said, people typically have a hell of a lot easier time engaging those lats when they have a slight arc in their back or upwards, because when the shoulder blades in particular are elevated and protracted forwards, this is what I like to call the off position. When you do this, everything in your upper body just goes, your chest turns right off, your lats off. I can engage my lats here, sure, but it's usually a heck of a lot harder for people to do so. And so that's why I was saying earlier with the elbows and stuff, when people are doing pull-ups and they're pulling up like this, it's usually a lot more challenging to get the back to engage. So it's typically back, having the arched back as well. But if you get really good at that, then move on to the hollow body and see if that works as well. If you can get the lats to engage. Because remember, the muscles are engaged due to your neural demand. And real true neural proficiency comes from saying, I don't care what I do, it always is engaging the muscle. It's not about what exercise, like what's the best way to build the lats up. Oh, it's this exercise done this special way, this programming, it's just dialed in perfect. But someone with really good neuromuscular proficiency in the lats, it's like, dude, give me anything and I'll make the lats grow. Freaking walking, I'll make the lats grow, because I can engage and control the tension of my lats with anything I do. And boy, if there's ever something that's going to greatly increase your ability to build and strengthen a muscle, it's not to use it in one exercise done one particular way, 1 or 2 times a week. It's to do it all the time. That's why I have the calves I have. And people are like, what do you do for your calves? The answer, everything. I use my calves to a very high degree. Literally anytime I'm using my calves more now than most people do during calf raises, as I'm just standing here, walking upstairs, riding my bike, running, taekwondo, getting out of a chair, all of these things, I'm using my calves to a very good degree, because my connection, that ability to generate tension in the calves, is so ingrained because I started learning it early. So my calves are getting a stimulus for growth and strength all day, every day. And if that's not going to help you build up a muscle, then I don't know what will. All right. Next one coming on in. Hey, Matt, I just saw a live stream. Want to say thanks for what you do. Greetings from France. Thank you very much for coming on in from France. I know it's getting a little bit late over there, probably a little bit later in the evening. Thank you so much for coming on in. Dan Jones. Hey, Matt, I like to do a few sets of isometric exercises using the WorldFit ISO trainer throughout the day. Highly recommend it. Good. Before I conduct these sets, do you recommend any sort of warm-up? Not really. Isometrics are a really good warm-up in and of themselves. Although I will say, usually if I'm going to go all out and really hit those isometrics, is the first set, I'll just kind of put in like maybe 80% effort and intensity, and I'll let my nervous system kind of ramp up how hard I'm pushing into an exercise. So that's about it. But no, I wouldn't really, give you anything special for a warm up, because the isometric is pretty good on its own for that. Champ in the making, hey man, if you don't have the capability of getting optimal nutrition, you're eating what you can afford, how would you cut while relying on bread, rice, and basic stuff? Dude, I don't see that that's a great diet right there. So first off, optimal. Like, optimal is not maintainable. That's the first thing to always recognize, is that your very best is not something you can continue to do. So sometimes when we're talking about losing ground on a regression, what ends up happening is people's regression is from a level of effort that they just simply can't sustain, that they can't go with. We all have a level of effort in diet and exercise and everything that is unsustainable. I always call these sorts of things the Everest goals. Like, we can get to the top of Everest, but we can't stay there. With hard work and discipline and stuff, we know we can achieve certain levels of a diet, certain levels of exercise, certain levels of things that is there, but no one can stay there. So a lot of times when we feel like, oh, I'm regressing, oh my gosh, I'm going backwards and everything, it's like, yeah, if you're going for as good as you can possibly get, you're going to have to regress to some degree. There's just no way you can sustain that. And it's different and relative to everybody. When I was mountain biking in college, I was riding for hours every single day. I was racing 4 or 5 races a week in college. I didn't have a job. I didn't, that was something that I could keep relatively easily in my college. But then I got out of college and I didn't have sponsorship and I didn't have the time and I didn't have the energy. And I started to say, well, I want to put on some muscle. So I started putting on muscle. And of course, that just makes you much slower on the bike. So all of that ability it wasn't even optimal, but even halfway damn good as a bike racer in college, there's no way I could sustain that, afterwards. So I lost ground. And I was perfectly fine with it, because it literally in many ways came down to, well, you can keep that, but it's going to cost you an awful lot of money and an awful lot of time. And you're going to also have to stay skinny at 150 pounds. I'm like, oh no, I don't want that. It's like, well, then you're going to lose ground. Like, fine with me. I'm fine with that. I remember the day when I started to really make that decision was I went out for a bike ride and I was on the road and I passed by a park and all these people were in the park. And I was like, oh, I wonder what's going on. I pulled in real quick and some of my friends were there and it was some sort of a festival. I forget what it was. And they were having fun and they were kind of goofing around with a Frisbee and drinking beer and having food and everything. And they were like, you should join us. You should join us. And I was like, nah, guys, I got to train. I got to ride and everything. I'm going out to Smuggler's Notch and everything. I got about 5 miles down the road and I was suddenly like, what the hell am I doing? I don't want to be doing this. I want to go join my friends. I'm like, what are you training for? You have no races to do. You have no teammates counting on you. Like, what are you doing this for? So I turned around, went home, changed out of my clothes and went and joined my friends. I'm like, there's no good reason for me to do this ride right now. It doesn't make any sense. So I didn't do it. And did I get slower on the bike? Of course I did. And I'm more than happy with that. But anyway, I'm off on things like that. So we're talking about nutrition. Now, nutrition is not something that needs to be done correctly. Again, okay, it's not right. This idea of like, you got to get it just right and perfect in order to get results. No, nutrition is just like working out. It just needs to be consistent with your habits and it just needs to progress over time, which is why most people's diet sucks, because too many people are trying to eat right. Like, I don't ever want to eat right. I want to eat better. I want to eat progressively better. If you can't say my diet is better now than it was 6 months ago, your diet approach sucks, because it should be improving over time. And no, that doesn't mean just not eating too much junk food. There's a hell of a lot more to it than that, because we keep blaming food for our diets. I have a great diet. I eat all the good food. Okay, good food is good, but that's not enough. That's not even close to enough. It's like, oh, my diet sucks because I eat bread. No, it's not. The entirety of the healthiness of a diet is the usefulness of the foods you eat. not whether or not it's good or bad due to some arbitrary rule some nutrition guru told you on Instagram. When you consume food, keep in mind, your body doesn't use food. It uses nutrients. Everything you eat, your body digests and breaks down into components, like deconstructing a Lego set. And if your body's like, dude, all right, I got these, I got this vitamin, mineral, and stuff, I could use this stuff. All right, this is good. I could make use of this. I could use it to build myself up and fuel myself in my activity. I don't care what it came from. It could be bread, it could be rice, it could be a candy bar, for all sakes. If your body's like, I could totally use this, this is great, it's healthy, full stop. But if you're consuming stuff and your body's like, I don't need this, what am I supposed to do with all this extra whatever? It doesn't matter what it is. It's like, I got all this extra, great, all right, I either get rid of it or I guess I got to store it somewhere, somehow. Then it's not that helpful and arguably not that healthy. Again, it doesn't matter what it's from, it's whether or not it's useful or not. So when we're coming up to our diet, and I love this phrase you use, basic stuff. Basic stuff, dude, basic stuff is the foundation of a healthy diet. Bread, awesome. Rice, great. Fruits and vegetables, good. Generally when people come to me and they're like, I don't have anything fancy, I just got basic whole food stuff. I'm like, dude, you're probably eating better than 90% of the people in this country right now. So I would say that you're probably not that bad off. Your diet may be very good as it is. So it's much more about just managing portions and keeping things in check as far as like, well, you don't drink too much. You don't have all that much as far as, an imbalance. Like, oh, I eat tons of breads and rices and stuff, but there's very little protein, or there's very little plant-based foods, nutrient-dense foods. Okay, then we adjust and tweak things around. But always remember, too, that we have a lot of times in life, we're going to have very little or limited control over our situations, too. And I get this question a lot from people who live at home. Their kids, teenagers growing up, and they're like, my mom and my parents, they supply the foods and everything like that. And they make mac and cheese and all this processed stuff. What do I do? It's like, you eat what you can. Yeah, it's not exactly what you want, but you get what you can out of it. The only bad diet is the one that ultimately starves you to death. We have this real warped sense of what a bad diet is here, especially in this country. We think a bad diet is causing love handles and cellulite and stuff. No, a bad diet causes malnutrition. So if you're not suffering from malnutrition, your diet's not that bad. Trust me, there's billions of people out there who would love to have your diet, because it means, hey, I'm not going to go to bed hungry 5 nights out of the week kind of stuff. And then it's just a matter of maybe asking for, can we get a little bit more fruit or something in the house or something? But you're going to have limited resources. You might as well just get what you can out of it and make the most of it. All right. And last part, you were talking about cutting. Again, a lot of times cutting and stuff, again, for a lot of people, that's a Everest goal. Like when people are like, dude, I cut down to 5% body fat. Good. Enjoy it while it lasts, because most people are there for very short periods of time. There was a podcast I was listening to of a fitness cover model back when they made these things called magazines. And he's like, yeah, people stop me on the street all the time. And they're like, dude, you let yourself go. And it's like, the images you see on those magazines of me shredded, I've been doing this 15 years. I've probably looked like that a total of 2 weeks out of this entire 15 years. He gets to that point, but he doesn't sustain it. Shredded and stuff is usually not something that people can stick with. Anyway, Michael McCohen, hey, Matt, no question. Just letting you know I'm combining info of overcoming isometrics with suspension calisthenics. Has been great. Awesome. One hell of a combination. Good for you, man. Good for you, especially to combine such things like that. Okay, let's see if I've addressed everything. All right, I promised motivation. Sorry to get to it. It was so long, but motivation is a huge thing. You'll hear a lot of times people on the internet are like, motivation doesn't matter. You need discipline. Complete BS. Okay, without motivation, you're totally screwed, because as human beings, we are fundamentally emotional creatures. Unless you're in a situation where you are literally being forced to exercise and eat a certain way, I'm thinking like military boot camp or something like that, the entirety of your actions depends 100% on your motivation, because you don't have someone forcing you to do the thing. Yeah, motivation doesn't matter if you're getting forced into it. However, most of us are not in that situation. We have lots of freedom and lots of choice, in which case your actions are 100% dependent upon your motivation to do those things. If you're not motivated to work out, you're not going to work out. It's as simple as that. You need to have motivation. It's not a trivial thing. It's not a luxury or a snowflake woke idea or anything. It is 100% integral into your success and how you operate as a human being. Without it, you are screwed. And it's natural for motivation to ebb and flow from time to time. Perfectly natural, because how we feel about things, which is where your motivation is coming from, is natural to change. Mountain biking. I love mountain biking, but there have been times in my life I'm like, not really feeling like mountain biking so much anymore. I just do a lot of hiking then. And other times I'm like, dude, I can't wait to get on the mountain bike again. It's like, great, motivation, keep going kind of thing. So when it comes to the motivation factors going on, it basically comes down to a balancing act between cost to benefit ratio. And it's not even so much an objective things like, okay, how much money am I spending on my gym membership and how much time does this workout take me and things. That's certainly part of it, but it's largely an emotional cost to benefit ratio. Give me something where someone feels a large amount of emotional benefit to it, and they'll pay almost any cost to it. I always like to tell this story. Back in the day when I was first started training out, I was living at home for a brief stint, and it was 10:30 at night, or like 10 o'clock at night, and I was getting my shoes on. I was going to go out, and my parents were like, "Where are you going? It's like 10 o'clock at night." And I was like, Queechee? They're like, Queechee? That's like an hour and a half. Why are you going to Queechee at this hour at night? What are you doing going to Queechee? I'm like, gonna go see a friend. And my mom was like, oh God, you teenagers, I don't know. And my dad just gave me this look like, gotcha, drive safe, okay? Because he knew what I was doing. He's like, you're going down for a booty call. That's entirely what's going on. Just drive safe, okay? I'll see you in the morning. And that's what the situation was. I was exhausted. I was tired. It was late at night. Driving all the way down to Queechee sucks in Vermont. But why was I doing it? I had a huge motivational pull to go there at that night to see my friend, right? But on the other hand, several years later, I'm sitting on the couch and watching TV, and I'm like, oh man, that's right. I've got to work out. I need to do that tonight. And it's right down in the basement, and I could not get myself to just get up off the couch and literally walk down the stairs that were right in front of me to go do some pull-ups. It was easier for me at 10 o'clock at night to drive an hour and a half through crappy weather to southern Vermont than it was for me to just walk down a set of stairs into a basement. And that's because of the emotional payoff to cost ratio. I was huge emotional payoff. I didn't care what the cost was at that time, but I wasn't excited for that workout. I wasn't really feeling it. I was like, I don't know what I'm going to get out of this. And the emotional cost to just get up off the couch was massive. So I didn't do the workout. So we want to manage these emotional rewards to payoffs as much as possible. We'll get into how we can do that a little bit more, but let me get to some more questions here. Jonas, hey Matt, quite new to regular strength training. Welcome, my friend. In bodyweight rows, I don't feel my lats working as strong as with isometrics. Also shoulders, hands, etc. get tired way before lats. Why? Well, it could just be those are weak links that are getting stronger. Whenever we're doing compound movements, especially when you're fairly new to it, you're typically going to feel it more in the weak links first, and those are going to have to strengthen up to kind of balance things out. And then once they do get balanced out, then you're going to probably get more from the other things. Also, but you do say you notice it in the overcoming isometrics. And again, that's why I always say overcoming isometrics is by far the easiest way to work your muscles as hard as possible. And whenever we're trying to get a muscle to engage, that's why isometrics works so much better than dynamic stuff. But I would bet money that what's going on is when you are doing the row with the isometrics, your shoulders are more depressed and maybe a little more retracted. But when you're doing the bodyweight rows, you're elevated slightly. And because your lats are partially responsible for forceful depression of the scapula. So here's what I would do, is do the isometric for about 5 seconds or so, just get the muscles to turn on. Then use your rows, but use a regressed version. Always remember, every strength exercise, particularly dynamic, has a level of resistance that's actually going to result in worse tension activation and technique. You can do it, but the quality is not quite going to be there. So you may just be slightly overloading yourself a little bit. So regress the resistance on those rows, angle your body up, bend your knees, that sort of thing, and see if you can get those shoulders to depress a little bit more as you do the row, and you're not hunching up your shoulders. That may make the difference for you, possibly. I hope that helps. Walt W. was saying, remember the video you did on 10 things you would have done differently when you first started, and how push-ups and pull-ups width is more beneficial than doing wide push-ups and pull-ups width. Yeah, I like things narrow, close, nice and tight. And I still abide by that. I very rarely, was doing images earlier today for my next book on bodyweight training. I was a little bit wider and I was like, dear God, this feels so weird. Like, it does not feel stable and it doesn't feel like my muscles are working the way I want. Granted, it's not what I'm used to, but it's definitely the way I like to do things, is keeping things tight and narrow. So anyway, we're talking about motivation, payoff versus cost. So here's the deal, is my strategy is always minimize the costs and expand upon the payoffs. So when it comes to minimizing costs, we have the objective costs like time and energy and money and things like that. So that's why we don't want to get stuck into the more is always better, and I'm just going to work myself to death approach, because every ounce of energy and effort you're putting into it is like an investment. And the only way that's going to pay off is it better pay off in better return than what you're investing. But if you keep the investment relatively low, like with my micro workouts approaches and stuff, and exercises that don't require, trips to the gym and a lot of equipment and a lot of setup and all this other high maintenance stuff, then you're greatly increasing your chances of a positive return on that investment. And then using things that give you a big return on the investment, not just as far as results, but immediate investment. Like, what kind of exercise makes you feel good now? What kind of training and environments make you feel good during your workouts immediately? Not this will pay off 6 months down from the road. But if you hate going to the gym, don't go to the gym, because that's a huge emotional cost that is just compromising, and it's a liability. But if you're like, I love going outside, I love working out in the park, then you go to the park. If you are like, oh, I can't stand pull-ups, they're so weird and awkward and everything, okay, do bodyweight rows then. You want to have as big an immediate payoff as possible to as little cost. And when you have that, you're going to have that scale tip for more motivation. And yeah, sure, there's always going to be acute little changes in our motivational periods and stuff. That's why it's good, again, to have a multi-pronged approach and have lots of different things that you can do. And so it's like, I don't feel like mountain biking today. Okay, great. What do you want to do? Go for a hike or something. Okay, great. Go for that. That's what a fundamental approach gives us, is the freedom and flexibility to change how we're training and how we're eating and everything 100 different ways. And we're still effective, because it's not about what your diet and exercise program is. It's about how well you can influence the fundamental processes of mother and human nature. That's what ultimately makes this stuff work, not whether or not you're doing 5 sets of 6, or if you work out at a certain heart rate, or whether or not you're doing pull-ups with a wide grip or a narrow grip. That stuff is much more superficial details that ultimately in the long run probably doesn't matter very much. So it's much more important to just do what you want and what you feel you get the most out of. And that's probably going to be a bigger difference for your motivation scale and your balance. Mariano, it's good to see you again. Hey, Matt, lately I managed to get the motivation to train aligned with my life, as it was when I defined what I wanted from my training, why I needed it. I found my why. Absolutely. That's a good thing. I wholeheartedly agree. And that's why I'm a big fan of saying no to most training methods or diets and everything like that. It's like when we were in school, when we were kids, like, teacher, when am I ever going to need to know this? Why do I need to learn this sort of thing? And the teacher would usually kind of be like, because you got to do this for, get good grades and then you get a good job or whatever kind of thing. It's like, this is really good things that kids are asking though, because we need a very strong reason to do things that require effort. That's not being lazy. That's just simply being intelligent, saying, I'm putting in a lot of time and energy and effort here. I need to know why I'm doing it. If you don't have a good reason to do it, you're not having the motivation to do it. That's literally what a loss of motivation is. It's your subconscious saying, dude, it's not worth it. What you're doing is wasting your time. You're wasting your energy. Stop doing it. That's what a loss of motivation literally means on a subconscious level. You just feel like it's not doing anything. So whenever I tell people, it's like, if you feel like an exercise or a type of programming or something just isn't in alignment with your objectives and your resources and stuff, and in the back of your mind, you're like, why am I doing this? That's probably a good reason to stop doing it. Don't force yourself to do it. I've done that with lots of different exercises. Lots of people are like, you should be doing this. You should be doing that. You should be training this way or that way. I'm like, no, I literally have no good reason to do it. And if you don't have a very good, compelling reason emotionally to do something, chances are it's not going to be very beneficial to you, and you probably shouldn't be doing it, because it's not like hard work is beneficial for its own sake. That's not true. You need payoff. You need it to be worth it. And if it's not worth it, you are wasting things. So it's not like it's neutral. It's stealing from you. It is costing you time and energy and other finite resources that are the essence of what your life is based on. And you're not using those resources for other things, which frankly are probably a hell of a lot more important. And so not only is it wasting those resources doing things that aren't beneficial, you're depriving those resources from things that are. And that's why following motivation is so incredibly important and inherently beneficial, because we want this exercise and diet stuff to be extremely beneficial, to be in our favor many times over. And if it's not, something's got to change. We don't want to just cross our fingers and be like, oh my gosh, we totally need this to work in the long run. Like, oh, it'll be worth it a year from now. No, I need it now. Instant gratification is not a bad thing, folks. The most successful people understand how to make the instant gratification work in their favor. I need my workout to make me feel good about what I'm doing now. I want results now. I want benefit now. Sure, I'm not going to build 10 pounds of muscle today, but I want to have stress relief. I want a satisfying pump. I want to feel like, oh, that bridge is really getting a lot better right now. Oh, that feels better than it has in a while. Oh man, my sidekick feels so good. Woo, yeah, that brings me a lot of satisfaction. Instant gratification is a very powerful thing, and you should definitely embrace the hell out of it and seek it for the benefits that you can have. All right, I'm going to leave it off on that one there. Let me know if you have further questions. DM me Red Delta Project on Instagram or at gmail.com. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming on and listening, and I will talk to you guys next week. Don't forget, check out the Kensui line of weight vests and fitness accessories at the link down below. Use the discount code at checkout. I don't actually know what the discount is. They gave me the discount code. I'm like, for how much? So I guess it's a mystery at this point. Probably like 10%, because that's what it always is these days. But use that at checkout to have a discount on their products, which I highly recommend and highly endorse. All right, I'll talk to you next time, folks. Till then, be fit and live free.